What's up, guys, and welcome back for another solo mining episode. We're going to be talking about Null-Sec moon mining, and this is one of those things that you're going to have to get into when you get into more advanced industry, because reactions are going to require what is called moon goo and everything. Now, if you're used to or have done moon mining in high sec, those are what are considered R4 moons, and it essentially has just ubiquitous ore in it. Now, in my experience, most of the moons that you'll be doing here in Null-Sec are going to be either anywhere between R4 ubiquitous or up to R16, which can be uncommon. So right now I'm mining uncommon moon ore, so that means that this moon frac is an R16, so it actually includes common, ubiquitous, and uncommon. Now, you might be in a situation where you'll do like an R32. R32 is going to have rare moon ore in it, and then R64 will have exceptional. I usually train my alts or my tunes for modulated strip miners because I want the most yield per cycle. And I'm using a Mackinaw here because Mackinaws can hold quite a bit, and since you're solo, you don't have any way to kind of get a lot in, let's say, a procure in a single run, because like I said, moon ore is very, very heavy when it's just in its raw form. So we're going to talk about value, we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff for moon mining, but also I want to kind of touch on some more generalized Null-Sec solo mining topics, and really in terms of skills that you should be looking at. And these are skills that you probably wouldn't necessarily get if you were in high sec prior to getting into Null-Sec, but having really, really high drone skills in Null-Sec is extremely important, especially as a solo miner, because drones are your first and pretty much your only line of offense when it comes to combating rats. So you want to have your, let's say, for instance, Caldari drone specialization. You want that as high as possible to increase damage. You want drone durability as high as possible to increase the survivability of your drones, so you don't have to replace them as much. You want drone avionics to have them move a little bit faster and also be able to control them out to a higher range. And then also, if you're using any sort of mining drones or something, or want more damage for your drones on top of the roll skill, you want drone sharpshooting and drone interfacing. So being a solo miner, you definitely want to have as much drone skills as possible. And then going over damage mitigation, a lot of the times you won't be able to destroy like a battleship rat, so I'll usually just let it damage me till I fill up. So having your shield skills really, really high, and having your hardeners on, and also navigation skills, being able to actually have navigation 5. The faster you can go sub-warp, orbiting around a rock, the faster you go, then the more damage you can mitigate because of how tracking works. So just a few things I wanted to kind of address there. So if anybody is looking to get into Null-Sec mining, you're not kind of out on grid and you're unable to do anything because you can't get the drones off grid, and it's just tedious. But let's talk about moon mining. Moon mining is really nice because the rocks are really big, and you're always gonna be most likely near a dockable structure. You do want to have like a bookmark. So from where the rocks are, and then you have the structure on the back side of that structure, what we call a rear tether. You want to have a rear tether. That way, if something happens, a nuke comes in system or whatever, you can essentially get to that rear tether, and you want that bookmark to be within range of docking for that structure. That allows you to essentially warp straight to that bookmark and dock up immediately, or have a player-owned star basin system that you can kind of go off to, and then from that POS you can come back and dock into like Forzar or whatever. But For the most part, you guys, you can tell the inventory value of moon ore is very, very low, and I'll kind of talk about that more at the end of the video. But the reason why moon ore value in the inventory estimate is really low is because most of the time people are not putting raw ore for moons on the market, so they end up not being able to sell it, and it ends up having to be dropped in price. But pretty much all of the value for moon ore is in the moon goo, and I will compare what this Mackinaw does. We'll fill up this Mackinaw, and then I'll show you what the inventory estimate value is, and then I'll show you what the refined value is, and we'll also compare the volume itself, and you'll see that refining it in most cases is better than compressing it. Now, compression is different for moon mining. You need to have an Orca with the moon ore compressor, or a Rorqual with moon ore compressor. You cannot compress moon ore in station like you normally could for everything else, so keep that in mind. Now, if there was a situation where I need to compress moon ore and I'm in Null-Sec, I'll usually take a Rorqual out to like a POS, and I will siege up in the POS, turn on compressor, and just kind of compress everything I've got, and then I'll bring like a crane or a bus dart or something and kind of bring whatever I have stockpiled out to that POS. That way I'm actually compressing in essentially a safe space, if that's the case. But most of the time you're just going to refine it into the moon goo itself. It's going to be really, really light in that form, with the exception of the moon ore that actually has pyrite and mexlon and stuff like that coming out of it. Those minerals are going to weigh as much as they normally do. So keep that in mind. And if I'm coming out here, I'm kind of just getting whatever. I gotta try to get all the uncommon first, and then I'll go to the common and then get the ubiquitous last. For me and how I mine, and as you probably noticed from this series, I like to just kind of get everything, mine everything, and then figure it out later. And when you start looking at doing reactions for advanced industry, you're going to need pretty much a little of everything, and that's just kind of how that goes. So knowing what your priorities are and knowing what you need at the moment, but in most cases it's really nice to just come out here and get as much as you can even before you need it. It's better to have kind of a stockpile of everything, and then when you need it, you have it, as opposed to needing it and then having to stop operations to kind of go out and acquire it and things like that. Moon mining can be very, very profitable. In most cases, it's usually better at scale. So having a porpoise with a bunch of mining alts will really benefit with this kind of setup. Alright, as promised, let's talk about value. And as you can see here, and you're probably wondering, well, 44,000 cubic meters of moon ore being only worth 1.2 million is pretty bad, and I would have to agree with you if you actually went off of this price. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to select all this. We're going to hit reprocess. Now let's look at this. Now keep in mind, I don't have the best reprocessing skills. I got 4 of a lot of it, but I don't have an implant or anything. So I'm sitting at 82.3% in this structure. But as you can see here, value is 1.2 million. But then when the refined goo comes out, we're looking at 15.3. And that's where the value is. We also went from 44,000 cubic meters in volume to 101.85 cubic meters. So I wouldn't try to stress too much about getting like an Orca or a Rorqual in order to compress the stuff. I would almost in all cases, before you move it, just bring it down to this moon goo area. Now, obviously, if you're mining stuff that has like mineral byproducts like pyrite or mexlon, that stuff's going to get really, really heavy too. But that stuff's not really even the value either. Like this goo stuff, these elements, that's what is the real value here. But moon mining is definitely something. It's a necessary evil if you want to advance and to do higher and more lucrative things in manufacturing. So I thought it prudent to actually cover this mining and talk about whether or not it's possible solo in this series, and it definitely is. It's just I like anything else in Null-Sec for mining, I go out, I try to fill up the Mackinaw or the Procurer, try to do that several times a day, as opposed to how I normally do like high-sec mining, where I'll go out and do very long sessions. In most cases, I don't do long session mining in Null-Sec. I go out there, I try to get a a good load and try to fill up my ship. And then if local is, or if the area is clear and intel is clear, then for a while, that's why I have timestamps on intel channels and stuff like that. Then I'll go out and try to do another run kind of intermittently throughout the day. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Moon mining is definitely something that is very valuable to get into, and we'll be covering a lot more of it in the future. But I figured this would be a kind of a good start and a generalized coverage of the actual process. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next one. Peace out.